Keir Starmer is stealing from you to keep racists happy. I was going to hold off on talking about this until I'd finished my big Labour project, which is going to involve all the videos I asked you guys to make, but because of what's happening in 2 Saturdays' time, I can't afford to wait. Now, we've heard the Prime Minister repeatedly say that he can't afford to pay for this or that to help us with the cost of living crisis because the economy is in such a bad state, and he uses the figures of the Office of Budget Responsibility to make that excuse. Well, that same Office of Budget Responsibility says that our economy would be 4% bigger if not for the trade barriers created by Brexit, which is equivalent to roughly 100 billion throughout the whole economy and 40 billion in the government's own purse. Which means anytime you hear Keir Starmer say that we can't afford to pay for something, like scrapping the 2-child cap and making sure that the third kid in the house also gets to eat, there's 40 billion pounds a year just sitting on the table that he's refusing to touch. Now, that Brexit damage is caused by the fact that UK products and EU products no longer follow the same rules. We used to be in the system called the EU single market, which meant that products across Europe follow the same rules, and so there's no expensive red tape when you try and buy and sell between countries. Not being in that system is making things more expensive, like food, directly contributing to the cost of living crisis. And we in the UK get about a third of our food from the EU. So not being in that system, Brexit overall is costing us all about £1,000 a year. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about, because there is no justification at all for us being outside of the EU single market. All the extra poverty, all the extra financial hardship that you're going through has no democratic basis. In 2016, during the referendum, the Leave campaign said,
absolutely nobody is talking about threatening our place in the single market.
Nigel Farage himself defended the idea of us being like Norway, which is in the single market.
Everybody from David Cameron to half this panel say, wouldn't it be terrible if we were like Norway and Switzerland? Really? They're rich, they're happy, they're self-governing.
And then in both of the elections that followed in 2017 and 2019, parties that promised to maintain all the benefits of the EU single market got the majority of the vote. And right now, the majority of the countries in favour of rejoining the EU single market and the EU as a whole. The Tories have admitted that Brexit is making us poor. The Reform Party have admitted that Brexit is making us poor.
We're getting poor for a variety of reasons, of which Brexit is one.
So because they've all admitted it, there isn't any political party in the UK that could win the argument that rejoining the EU single market wouldn't help people with the cost of living crisis. And Keir Starmer has a historic majority in Parliament, so he can literally say and do whatever he wants. So the only explanation for why he wouldn't do something that would help tens of millions of people who are struggling financially in this country is that he's trying to avoid the Daily Mail and Nigel Farage saying mean things about him. And you remember how the value of the pound plummeted in 2016 when they announced the result of the Brexit referendum? Well, if Keir Starmer announced that we'd be rejoining the EU single market, sending a message to businesses across the world that the UK could be a base of their European operations because anything made in the UK would have immediate access to the whole of Europe, the value of the pound in people's pockets would rise immediately. And that's why I am asking you to show up in London on Saturday the 28th of September. There are coaches available at the National Rejoin March. Because this is about so much more than just our relationship with the EU. This is about two things: the cost of living crisis and sending a message to Keir Starmer that we are done with him listening to people like Nigel Farage. Because the far right have had their shot in this country. We're poorer for it. More people lost their lives than should have done in 2020. People are still losing their lives in the Middle East, and we've seen riots on the streets. And that's why I'm asking millennials and Gen Z especially to show up and tell Keir Starmer enough is enough.